evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sunday Night Crimson Cast. We only do Sunday nights when it's something really special or when I'm very late because I'm traveling across multiple time zones. Both occurred this time. And man, do we have a ton to talk about. I am Galen Clavio. He is Scott Caulfield.
Are you going to complain about the travel? Like coaches going west to east and east to west? Do you want to complain about it for 5 minutes?
I tell you, I feel like I'm at about a 10-minute podcast, disparity. You give up some early points in the podcast. You got to do the second segment to try to make them up again. Yeah, no, it's I will say much easier to podcast going east to west than it is to podcast going west to east. I feel like I just woke up and then got on a plane and flew for 4 hours. But here we are. We're back, and we got a ton to talk about. And thanks to all of you for your patience. I know that many of you count on this show during the middle of the day on Sunday because you're anxious to hear about what happened. So we appreciate the grace as we needed some time to get ourselves together. Scott, I haven't talked to you. My phone, anybody who tried to message me or DM me, literally my phone died as I was walking out of Autzen Stadium. And at one point I had to resort to using my Apple Watch to send voice memos to people because I was still getting texts on the Apple Watch. But if you've ever tried to send a text via Apple Watch, it's
less than ideal.
Right. It's kind of like, it's like trying to fly, do like an airplane simulator just using a mouse with no keys. It doesn't really work very well. And so many people I've yet to get back in touch with, but man, everybody reached out. It felt like just with excitement about this game, and rightfully so. So we're going to talk all the way through it. But Scott, we haven't had a chance to talk basically since the game ended. How are you feeling right now?
I'm still, I think somebody texted it's I don't know what to do with my hands moment. I'm still kind of at that point. I mean, I'm over the moon. I had a great time last night, just hanging out with neighbors and friends and my wife, watching the game and then partying afterwards. I'm still kind of in disbelief that it actually happened. And, I know we'll talk at the big picture, the reframing stuff. It's mind boggling, man. It really is wild to think that we're here. And, it's not just that it's here and it's now and it's one game. It's like this feels like the concrete is really hardened in this. And up to this point, it's been kind of nice. And but this is the first time I'm like, this is real. And this could be the real way things are for quite some time.
Yeah, it's, someone who is very closely tied to the whole Indiana athletics scene. We were having a conversation about how this was going into the game before we knew anything had happened. If this game ended up with Indiana winning it, it changes the equation entirely. It changes everything you think about how Indiana football is, what it can be, what it has achieved. And from a historical perspective, it gives Indiana something that, frankly, they've never had, which is an actual signature win on the road against a team that absolutely everybody thought was a great team. And we'll get to that in a little bit.
When it's so funny. It's so funny because we talked about this with the Pacers pod. When the Pacers made their run to the finals this year, it kind of legitimized what happened the year before, where when that happened, it's they had injuries and, they kind of lucked their way there and the Knicks squad was getting tired. And then all of a sudden the Pacers make this run and it's back-to-back Eastern Conference champions. That's good. And it's funny. I was listening to some recaps, after the game on ESPN and stuff. And you already saw it happening where, commentators were like, well, but they beat a pretty good Illinois. Suddenly Illinois is good now. And then that win at Iowa is good. And then it's they go back. It's this team went 11-1 last year. It's suddenly it post-dated and legitimized all of this stuff that wasn't legitimate 24 hours ago, which is wild.
Yeah, no, it's there's so much to dive into with all that. We're going to do a lot of that in the second half of the show. We want to focus this first half of the show on the game and the experience in Eugene and just everything that went along with that. And then we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Penn State job with James Franklin getting fired today. And I know a lot of people are nervous, so we'll talk through that with you all. We're going to talk through what this means as far as the playoff scenarios moving down the line in the Big Ten. I mean, there's just a ton of things to get to. So all that's coming up. So be patient. We are on YouTube live right now. If you're watching, if you're not, then you're probably listening afterwards on Spotify or Apple, but we do go live regularly on YouTube for things like this. If you subscribe on Back Home Network's YouTube channel, you can get a notification that'll pop up whenever we get one of these live things set up. So you might want to consider doing it for that purpose. Before we get rolling, I did want to say we are brought to you by Home Field Apparel, our presenting sponsor here on the Back Home Network, and your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs. I had the pleasure of riding out on the plane to Eugene on Friday with Home Field founder Connor Hitchcock and his lovely bride, and it was Connor and I had a lot of great conversations before we got on the plane about the possibilities. And if you haven't checked out Split Zone Duo's podcast, like the fastest 30 minutes or slowest 30 minutes in college football, if you haven't checked that out yet, please check out the first segment of that for a special message from Connor Hitchcock from Home Field Apparel. Home Field folks, they started as an IU-focused brand. Hoosier proud. Kick was good.
It was good.
To watch them rocket up the charts on this has been amazing. The amount of Home Field Apparel, Indiana and Oregon, that we saw at game day in Autzen Stadium was really, really remarkable. And just our hats off to Connor and the whole Home Field crew for everything that they did. It was great that Connor made it down on the field after the game. I saw a picture on the Home Field account. So follow the Home Field account, Home Field Apparel on X, on Instagram. Hit up Home Field Apparel. Use the code HOME23 and get 15% off your first order. Tons of great stuff, including this delightful crew neck, which I should have worn. I actually was like going into the game, I was like, I'm going to miss not having that crew neck, but I rode with the Script Indiana hoodie, also from Home Field, which ended up in all the pictures after the game. That hoodie deserved its moment in the sun. This one will have its moment at some point soon. Anyway, these are the little NPC things that you can write for your Home Field Apparel. Every shirt has some kind of a backstory.
Right.
Now tied to IU football or IU basketball. So start building your own collection. Go to homefieldapparel.com. I thought you were going to jump in with something there, Scott.
No, I'm ready to go to the game. I love Home Field. We've talked about it. I'm ready to talk about the game.
Let's do it. All right, let's jump right in. So let's start with the way that the game unfolded. This was a game that a lot of people, myself included, generally thought Oregon was going to be the better team over the 60 minutes because it was in Autzen. But what I talked about in the preview podcast was Indiana had all the ingredients necessary to win this type of a game, that it was probably going to be their defense leading the way, and that it was really about, how well could Indiana handle the moment, because it didn't look like they handled the moment as well as they could have last year in the two biggest games that they had. And there were a variety of reasons for that. One of the reasons was Indiana, while an amazing team last year, didn't have quite the same selection of dudes that they have this year. And we thought that. We'd seen it in the Illinois game. We'd seen them rise to this insane level against the top 10 team. A team, by the way, that's only lost 2 games this season. One of them to the number 1 team in the nation in Ohio State, and one to the number 3 team in the nation, who I'll note beat them by 53 points, which the number 1 team in the nation did not do. But that we'll talk about that later. But you'd seen that the potential was there. And I think the question in most people's minds, certainly the question in my mind, was how many strides has Indiana taken in a road environment, one of the most hostile environments, one of the hardest places to play in college football, a place that since the beginning of the 2017 season, only 3 teams total had beaten them. A team that had won all but one of their home games since the start of the 2019 season. Could you match up in that environment? Could you play a full 60 minutes? And I think even in my wildest dreams, Scott, I thought, well, if Indiana's going to do this, it's either going to be a grinded out like slugfest, or Indiana was going to get some luck along the way with turnovers. And we kind of got a little bit of the former, but I would say, and this isn't just me, like I watched the game with a former assistant coach in college football who knows the game about as well as anybody. He looked over me as like, Indiana dominated all 4 quarters of this game. Like, this was not a case of Indiana getting lucky. This was not a case of Indiana having like fortune bounce in their favor. Like, if Oregon hadn't had fortune bounce in their favor, they might have only scored 6 points or 10 points in this game. That's how dominant it ended up being physically from Indiana in the trenches. And that is not something that I thought was going to be the scenario going into this game.
agree with all of that. I listened to a lot of the pregame pods that you did, and the things that kept coming up were, last year against Ohio State, you had the moment where you had the punt block where things kind of fell apart after that. In Notre Dame, you had the interception followed by a 95-yard run. And, as you were talking about, and we talked about in those pods, it's like, take those things out and the rest of the games are pretty even. It was just, those were moments where, the like that caused an issue with the team and like they weren't able to come around it. What I thought was so amazing in this game is you basically had two plays like that. You had the broken coverage touchdown. Like Indiana starts the game, they're dominating, they're up like 3-0. And then Oregon gets that one broken, the coverage where back safety takes the wrong route. It's like walk in touchdown, 7-3. That's similar to that Notre Dame play, just an absolute gut punch shot where it's like, damn, like we're playing so tough. And the one play breaks it, doesn't phase Indiana. Like they keep going. And then later on in the game, you're up 20-13 and you're driving. It's like, you can put this game away and then you throw a pick six. It's like, oh, damn. Like that's like both of those moments were moments where I'm like, those could have been years past, like last year, that might have been the moment. Like it was in Ohio State, like it was in Notre Dame. But in this game, they responded to both of them.
The DNA of Indiana football, that is the genetics.
Right.
You just said. You have a game, it feels like it might happen, it's kind of teetering, and then you make a big mistake and you never see it again. But it's funny. I remember that with the pick six, because I'm in the end zone and you kind of offset a little bit to I guess would have been the right side. And I could see Mendoza when he threw that ball. I was like, that doesn't look like it's going where he wants it to go. And sure enough, it gets undercut and the guy's running. I didn't even watch the guy run. Jay Horry is standing behind me and I just turn back and look at him like, oh God, here we go. But even when it happened, like after I composed myself, I'm like, well, okay, we had cushion. And the way that this game is gone, Oregon needed that to be in the game. Now Indiana can go out and still do something, and this is where we see if Indiana can overcome their DNA.
And they did, and Mendoza came right back and drove it. I mean, that pick six I was thinking about later on throughout the game was, our defense only gave up 13 points.
Yeah.
Like that pick six was 7 of those points. But and again, it's kind of similar to the Old Dominion game. That broken coverage play happened. Like you can't take it away, but just take away one play and Oregon scored 6 points on our defense. Like, just think about that for a minute. 6 points and then one play. Even given that, they scored 13 points. Like, the defense held Oregon to 13 points. Just sit on that for a minute. The defense was unbelievable. So I have a friend who actually was a former manager. He played for Clemson in the 80s. And he texts me a lot. And he actually was on the 81 title team. So he knows football as well. He was texting me. He's like, dude, your defense looks like legitimately the best defense I've seen. Like, and you guys are dominating the line. Like anybody who watched this, I talked to Mitchell Page after the game. It's like everyone who's played football is watching this and they're just like, this is like, we are owning this team. Like we are, this is not a fluke win. It's not like, oh, you just caught them unprepared. It's like you both came in, you were both ready to play. And this was the far superior team, and it was us, the guys wearing red with the IU on the side of the helmet.
Yeah, no, and I think what's most fascinating, for years, Scott, watching IU football, we've lamented the lack of a defensive front that could really match up with the best physical fronts in the Big Ten. And it always felt like something that was just a luxury reserved for teams like Ohio State and Michigan, who just bring those guys in on the reg, or teams like Wisconsin, who are built entirely around that. And what was fascinating about this game, much like it was in the Iowa game, much like it was in the Illinois game, is going toe-to-toe with not just high-level developed guys like Iowa's got, but top-level recruits who are also high-level developed guys like Oregon's got. We all heard about the size disparity between their O-line and our D-line. But the speed, the technique, whether it was Stephen Daly on that tipped interception where he essentially, I heard somebody describe it on a podcast, forklifts the offensive lineman and then gets his hands up in time to tip the ball, or whether it's Mikhail Kamara, who again didn't register a whole lot of direct stats like tackles, but registered a ton of pressures, really disrupted things, allowed other people on the line to open things up. I think what stuck out to me the most in this game, as great as the defensive line played, the linebackers for this team are just an absolute unit. I mean, Fisher, Hardy, Isaiah Jones, all over the field, to the point where you're like, how are they getting to that spot so quickly? How are they able to anticipate? And what I really believe it's these are good players. These are excellent players. Aiden Fisher, I mean, we know this about him, but as I think it was, I think it was Split Zone Duo that mentioned this when they were talking about this game. It is easy to underestimate the benefits of another year of strength and conditioning under this group, under this coaching staff, and what they've been able to do. This is why Indiana's strength and conditioning coach was in such high demand that they had outbid USC to keep him. This is why another year under Brian Haynes and Pat Kuntz and this entire defensive coaching staff, like, they're schematically sharper. They know where they're supposed to be. As many concerns as there were about the secondary in this season, yeah, there was the one play where Indiana got burned deep. But if you go back and look at that play, it was a really, really good play design by Oregon. It forced the safety into a difficult position. He made the wrong choice. You can dwell on that, but if you consider that that was one of essentially only two plays that Oregon had in the entire game that really demonstrated a level of overwhelming offensive superiority. This is Oregon we're talking about, like a team that shredded last year's Penn State defense in the Big Ten championship game, a team that scored 32 points at home on Ohio State, the team that won the national title last year. I'll note that Ohio State lost in Autzen Stadium last year. Indiana just beat them by 10. The level of dialed in that this defense is right now, and where that the how do you know the way that you try to award accountability in a positive way for that, like who's responsible for Indiana being this good? It's partially the players, it's partially the coaching staff, it's partially the strength and conditioning team. They have honed this team into a fascinatingly devastating and frightening unit for opposing teams' offenses. And when you consider that they lost so many great players, they lose CJ West and they lose some great linebackers. They had to plug holes with other guys coming in out of the portal. They bring Lewis Moore back. I am so impressed with the way that Indiana's defense has coalesced so quickly. That is maybe the most terrifying defense that you're going to find right now in college football. And that is such an odd thing to say about IU football that we're just like, okay, we're going to go with it. However this sounds, that's great. But that's kind of what I felt like going into the game. And they just stepped up and proved it to another level against Oregon.
Well, and it's funny, you talk about like an embarrassment of riches. We have a quarterback that got drafted last year, and Signetti now has a quarterback who's in the Heisman race. So it's like, you could sell that, but it's like, you could sell on defense. It's like, I got CJ West drafted in 1 year at Indiana and then probably has 5 NFL players on the defense right now. I mean, it's nuts. The thing with the defense that I will say that I also loved is that I know that, near the end there, the last couple of drives, Dante Moore was a little bit compromised. His leg wasn't feeling as good. But, we've had a lot of situations where we've had an opportunity. Indiana hasn't taken it. I know we're going to get to recite the drives later, but when this defense smelled shum in the water, it's like the last 3 drives were punt, interception, and then game. It's like when they sensed it, it's like, ooh, he's a little bit down and this is our chance to take over. They just completely took over the game. The other thing that it's all still different ways of saying the same thing of like Indiana, like, won this game. There was nothing fluky. It wasn't like we passed for, 95% and didn't throw anything. Like, Galen, if I told you before the game, like, Oregon's going to hit a big play, Mendoza's going to throw a pick 6. By the way, Indiana is going to have some trouble with the crowd. They're going to have 8 penalties for 45 yards and just an unbelievable number of false starts, which might be because of stupid Oregon moving. And like they, on the broadcast, are like, I'm not sure you're allowed to do as much like up and down movement. But anyway, it's like Indiana was obviously bothered by that. And like, if I told you we were going to have an unclean game with, a bunch of offsides or false start penalties. There'd be one egregiously not called pass interference against Surratt, and then a pick six and a broken play for. You'd be like, those are all bad things. Like, we have to go in there and play a clean game. Like, and the fact that all of those things happened and we still won by 10 is un-effing believable, Galen.
We heard a lot throughout the course of the buildup to this game about how you weren't going to be able to sack more. He'd only been sacked once all season.
First play.
And I look around at the crowd. I was like, oh, hey, I thought he was impossible to take down. And then Indiana racks up 6 total sacks throughout the course of the game. In 2 games against Big Ten competition coming into this game, Penn State had allowed 9 tackles for loss total across those 2 games. Indiana picks up 8 tackles for loss defensively in this game alone. There's not enough superlatives for how well this defense is playing right now. And, they get 2 interceptions late, which was nice to see. They deserved to be in the plus category in terms of turnovers in this game because of the way that they played overall. But again, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of how good the defense plays overall. And the fact that Oregon only had 1 touchdown drive, so to speak, in the entire game, and that was on a long bomb. And every other drive that Oregon had either ended in a field goal attempt or ended in them going for it on 4th down and getting snuffed out is an amazing testament. And, I know that the guys and the coaching staff were a little bit hot about all of the size comparisons, but this just shows technique and speed can outdo physicality and strength if you know what you're doing. And I think that this group definitely does.
Well, and the other thing that also shifted for me in this game, I never thought we would see, because Illinois, like, that game's Memorial Stadium, and they got boat raced and kind of just were punched and couldn't get back up. But in the Ohio State and Notre Dame games last year, we talked about it. It felt like Signetti coached a little bit differently, but it also felt like Ohio State and Notre Dame never felt like they were on, like, they were never they were on their back feet. Like, they were never on their back feet. They were always on the offensive. It's like they knew what they were doing and they did what they were going to do. It's like we never were able to change their game plan. We come into Oregon. Oregon's ranked 3rd in the country. This is their home field. Dan Lanning is, basically the equivalent of, Dan, the Lions coach in college. Like, he goes for it. He's all about there. Dan Campbell. Yeah. They had 3 field goal attempts, one of which they missed. On those 3 field goal attempts, one was a 4th and 9 on the 22. I mean, that's a little stretching, but that's something he's normally gone for before. 4th and 5 from the 18, and he didn't go for it. This is a guy who goes for it all the time. Went for it in overtime against Penn State. And then late in the game, 4th and 2 from the 16, and he's kicking field goals. Like, that's how much the IU offense and defense, just like everything, threw him. Like, that last one, that 4th and 2 on the 16, I'm like, oh, they're going to go for it. And it's like they throw the kicking unit out. And again, as a fan, it's like, I'm so happy they're kicking. I don't want them to go for it. But that was the one where it's like, Oregon, we've officially put our will onto Oregon. Like, they are changing everything they're doing. It's like, they're just like, shit, we need the points. Like, we just need 3 points because I don't know if we're going to get back in the red zone. But the fact that we made Oregon kick a field goal on 4th and 2 in the red zone is that's almost more insane than a win.
Let's talk about the offense now. And this Indiana offense created a lot of good chances for themselves, not through explosive plays. I mean, they really had a very small number of explosive plays. I think 4, maybe 5 in the whole game, more than they've had, I will say. But, this was another game where Indiana really, they didn't try to press the issue. And this is where, to some degree, for the criticism that Signetti has gotten, which some of it I think is misplaced or undeserved about being conservative in games like this, I think what I've interpreted it as over the course of time is Signetti and Shanahan generally try to probe for weakness. They try to take what's being given to them because that is better than putting your team in a position where they're trying to force the issue. And we see a lot of college football teams force the issue and not really in their favor. And what was fascinating about this game offensively for Indiana was that they didn't really spread the ball around much at all. Only 4 players caught balls. EJ Williams got hurt on the first series, came back in, and he was kind of in and out the whole game. But the receiving game was almost exclusively Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper Jr. You had a little bit of Riley Nowakowski as a change of pace, and I was happy to see that because we hadn't seen a whole lot of that. But if you think about the Cheesecake Factory menu of the Indiana receiving numbers last year, where you've got Miles Price and you've got Keyshawn Williams and you've got all these different guys catching balls all over the field, they have really tightened it up to where they feel like, you know what, if we need yards and we've got the right setup, let's get it to Surratt. We know that he's going to make the catch. He is so good now at creating separation, putting the angles out there that are confusing defensive backs. For all the hullabaloo about Oregon and their 5-star recruiting classes and everything, Oregon didn't have a guy that could cover a guy that started his career at a Division II school. And this is both, I think, a proof of how development and training and effective coaching can help, but it's also a great illustrator of how when you get into these sorts of circumstances, you can't just take the recruiting numbers at face value as the only thing that matters. Omar Cooper Jr., watching him blossom has been amazing. He had the greatest individual looking catch of the game, that one-hander over his head, but he had so many other great plays. And even, we got Roman Hemby out of the backfield a couple of times catching balls. Those were both really important balls that he caught. Rushing, it was Roman Hemby's game. Kalon Black had one really nice 14-yard run, and that was about it. Although you could make an argument Fernando Mendoza was the second running back. Yeah. I mean, Mike Shanahan, we haven't seen a lot of design runs for Fernando Mendoza. To watch him clearly on purpose, waiting until the defense went full pass and then running for first downs was something Oregon had clearly not prepped for. And I give Mendoza a ton of credit for knowing exactly what angles to take on those runs. It was really, really cool to see.
No, I mean, a couple things. Like, you're right. Omar Cooper Jr. is now at a point where every game it feels like he has an unbelievable catch. He did it on that one, a great catch. And then also he'll gain like 9 more yards just because he will not stop and he's hustling. Like on that one, he had the catch. He spun around a guy. He then broke another tackle and then fell forward for like 5 more yards. I think Illinois, he had one where he just like would not stop going and got an extra like 15 yards. So he's good for that every game. But my God, man, the Mendoza to Surratt connection, it's there and it's real. And it felt like, again, watching on TV, just whenever they needed a play, it felt like Mendoza's like, I'm not going to go to Surratt every time because I could. I'm just going to keep, handing off and doing little RPOs. But it's like whenever they needed a play, he knew he had Surratt and Surratt was open. And what's funny is like now we're starting to get like, there are just signature plays they have. Like they have this, 11. So funny. We started the season worried about end zone. Can we convert in the red zone? And now you kind of have this one play where Surratt just starts on the wide side and just kind of does a corner route to the edge of the end zone, and Mendoza hits him on the right side. Like that was the last touchdown we threw. We've seen that play 2 or 3 times this year. There's Surratt going, just kind of getting his guy on the edge. There's also him going on a crossing route. They had a great little like interior play. But it feels like there's 4 or 5 plays which is like, oh, that's that Surratt Mendoza play. And we're starting to get those. And you're right. I mean, this is Oregon's defense. And they look like they had nobody who could handle Elijah Surratt.
Yeah. And when you get right down to it, I think it's Indiana team, the belief that they show in themselves and what they can do. And this was the same way in the Iowa game, which was a tough game. It was a game that, a lot of things weren't working the way that they probably should have. Indiana finds a way to make plays because this Indiana team believes that they're going to make the plays. And that above almost everything else is where you tip your hat to this coaching staff. And you felt a level of confidence going into this game if you listen to the coaching staff talk about how this game was going to go and what they were focused on. And that is not something that just comes naturally to Indiana and Indiana players. That level of belief that you're going to walk in to an incredibly difficult place to win against a roster stocked with 4- and 5-star players, a team that was in the college football playoff, went undefeated, went 10-0 essentially against the Big Ten in the regular season in the Big Ten title game. To have confidence that you're going to go in and take care of business on both sides of the ball is really awesome. And what's fascinating, you go through the PFF grades. It was a great game for the defense, their best game of the year against a Power 4 opponent. It was not a great game offensively in areas. Passing game was graded relatively low, but the receiving game was graded high. Run blocking and pass blocking were lower than we've seen in other games. But it didn't matter because there was a collective belief that plays were going to get made, and they made the plays at the right amount of time within the clock where they could continue on with what they were supposed to be doing on any given drive. And instilling that level of confidence has so many amazing knock-on effects. I mean, the thing about last year was the belief was there, but you saw it tested a few times, and it wasn't always for certain about how Indiana was going to respond. And I think as fans, we are very much dialed in to thinking, well, gosh, they're not going to figure this out, or the other team's going to have more confidence that they're going to get things done. And it was cool to watch Indiana, like you said, not just shake off that interception, the pick six, but also they shook off a lot of drives, especially early in the second half, where things did not go well. And for them to be able to do that and then put together what they put together as the game went along was really, really impressive. So that
and you also, you talk about clock management. Somebody, I apologize. Somebody had this quote up here, but like the clock management Signetti has is unbelievable. And again, you had it in Iowa. You have it here against Oregon. You have a drive with, 24 seconds at the end of the second quarter, the end of the first half, where we drive and get a field goal. And it's like, it's just such a smart, he's so good at that. Like 2 games in a row where I feel like those were both massive field goals, just massive ways to go into halftime. And he just played the clock beautifully on both of those.
Yeah. It sounds like a great time to do Recite the Drives.
Let's do it.
Let's go ahead and pop up Recite the Drives. Recite the Drives brought to you by Jeremy Barbuto of Ironhorn Enterprises. If you're looking for commercial real estate to sell, you need to get in touch with Jeremy, 315-436-3872, or Jeremy at ironhornenterprises.com. They purchase commercial real estate. Yes, Scott.
Since Jeremy started supporting this, we've never lost a road game. So I'm just saying, like, other sponsors, like, come on in to bring in the good luck. Like Jeremy, it's all him. Like, I don't know. We've never lost to a top 5 team when Jeremy's been sponsoring.
It's not coincidental. I'll tell you that right now. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the drives, and let's start things off here as we're reciting the drives with the first quarter of play. Let me scroll up here a little bit as I zoomed in a little bit too much. There we go. So right off the bat, as you mentioned, earlier on, you had Oregon essentially putting themselves in a position where they get sacked early, they get a couple of plays, they drive into Indiana territory, they go for it at midfield, and it doesn't happen for them. Indiana responds, 5 plays, 22 yards. They stall out a little bit. They get a field goal. And then both teams trade off a series of punts. But for Indiana's defense to come out and throw up 2 drives where Oregon gets 0 points out of them set such an amazing tone for the rest of this game. I don't think that you can overstate how important that was in terms of what Indiana needed to do to establish a presence, especially defensively in this contest.
Oregon only had 2 drives all game. They were over 10 plays. I mean, this is like one of the best offenses out there. And those 2 drives got 3 points, 1 field goal attempt, 1 field goal make. I mean, the other, I'm kind of playing around here with what we're talking about, but like, here's the number of plays per drive that Oregon had. It was 7, 3, 3, 12, 4, 11, and then 4, 8, 6, 2, 1. And then the last one is like a huge asterisk 6, but it's like that. Like, so basically the second half, the number of plays per drive is 4, 8, 6, 2, 1. That's unbelievable.
We get to the 2 touchdown drives at the end of the first quarter. Of course, Oregon with that 3-play 51-yarder with the pass over the top, of course, from Dante Moore to Malik Benson. As we mentioned, a breakdown in coverage that was caused by a really nice play design by Oregon. They set the formation up to the right. They snapped the ball. They looked like they're running to the right. It was a great backup by Moore. You see that throw, you're like, oh, I see where this guy's getting Heisman hype and where people really think that he might be a top-level pro. But then you look at what Indiana did, 9 plays, 75 yards. And you just go through and look at what Indiana did on this drive. And yes, there were some important chunk plays. You had the pass to Cooper for 11. You had another pass to Omar Cooper into Oregon territory. He was really the guy that carried this drive to some degree. But then you get down the field and that scramble by Mendoza on 3rd and 4. I can tell you from standing in the end zone on the opposite side, watching that break open there, was really, really cool to see. And it was one of those things where you looked at it and you said to yourself, wow, there's vision going on here in terms of what Oregon's doing defensively that might not have been there a year ago. Mendoza doing a great job of evaluating what the defense was giving him and making a play in the moment and getting extra yards that led to Roman Hemby scoring that touchdown right at the end of the quarter.
And just it's such a huge, like, again, just such a huge response by this team that we haven't seen in the past. Because the next drive, Oregon's going to kick a field goal, and they're going to go up. So it's going to be 10-10. But if Indiana doesn't respond there, it's like it's 7-3 Oregon after that break play. And let's just say that Indiana goes 3 and out, and then Oregon kicks a field goal. It's now 10-3. And now it's like you start feeling like, oh man, we gotta, like, we're playing really well, but we're now down 10-3. You could lose touch of this game real quick. But it's like, no, that's not what happens. Indiana immediately responds with a touchdown. So then it's 10-7. And it's like, all right, we're good. Like, then it gets 10-10. It's like, all right, you haven't lost control of the game. And so often we've seen in games in the past like this where, Indiana doesn't respond right away, and they do. And that's that touchdown drive was just so important.
Second quarter, Oregon comes back. Nice response. They drive down the field, 12 plays, 53 yards. They get a field goal. And this is where Indiana's offensive issues kind of concern me a little bit. Indiana goes 3 and out. They have to punt. Great job by the defense. Wasn't a 3 and out, but they force a punt on 4 plays for Oregon. Then Indiana punts again, and Oregon goes on this long drive. And you're like, well, this sucks. I mean, yes, Indiana's going to get the ball to start the second half, so it's not going to be a disaster. But the fact that Oregon's going to drive down the field methodically, score, and Indiana's going to be left with nothing was really frustrating given how well Indiana had played up to that point. But in the words of the immortal Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, as Indiana's defense stalls them out. And then I still can't believe that this guy's name is actually Atticus Sappington.
I know. I saw that when it was up there. I'm like, that's a great name. Like, I mean, we did a whole AI thing about quarterback names like 3 years ago. That's a great name.
But what was fascinating about this, it's 1st and 10 at the 23, and Oregon incurs an illegal snap penalty, and then they get 7 yards back. They get an incomplete pass, and then they try to run the ball. They have to set up for a field goal. So, and the people around me in the Indiana section was essentially like, why isn't Sig calling timeout? People were saying this online. And I was like, no. I don't think you guys understand. Signetti, given the way that drive had gone, I think was perfectly satisfied to give them a field goal to go into half. I also think he thought, well, if there is a kickoff and we get it at the 25, we can probably take the ball down the field in 25 or 30 seconds. We'd rather have the timeouts then. But also, given Oregon's propensity for going for it on 4th down, I think what he was concerned about after the 3rd down and what became a 4th down and 5, calling timeout there might have given Dan Lanning the thought process of, hey, maybe we should cook up a 4th down.
The reverse Bielema from Illinois.
So you just let it go. And then, of course, the field goal ends up getting missed. And then Indiana, with one of the most impressive drives of the game. I have a hard time signaling out which one is the most impressive, but one of the most impressive. 3 plays, 40 yards. It's Roman Hemby for about 14 yards. It's Elijah Surratt down the sideline. Omar Cooper catches one in there too, I think. And then at the end, there was a pass interference down at the end. And then Brendan Franke with 2 58-yard field goals, but only one of them
nailed both of them.
Yes, nailed both of them. And Indiana goes in at halftime leading.
And with that play, I will joke. You almost had, I've never seen it, a referee who should have been called for roughing the kicker. Like, he almost ran into the kicker trying to stop the first kick.
Yeah, that was pretty chintzy, which matched really what the Oregon refs were doing in general for most of the game. It was not a well-officiated game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Third quarter drives. It was not a good start for Indiana. 3 plays, -1 yard, a 3 and out on that first one. But again, the defense is able to come in and 4 plays and out for Oregon. But then Indiana 3 and outs again. Scott, are you feeling nervous at that point?
Yeah, no, because this is exactly one of the things we had talked about was, you felt this in some of the games last year against Notre Dame and Ohio State, where the defense really held up in both of those games outside of a play or two here or there. It's just the offense would start kind of doing this, where the offense would have trouble moving the ball, and it's like the 3 and outs are what's killer. It's like you're giving Oregon better field position. You're not moving the ball, not giving a chance to put up even 3 points here or there. So no, I was getting very concerned, and I was kind of in that mode of like, all right, well, at least we've shown we can keep this game close. Like
Indiana allows it's a bad sequence in general because that whole sequence, that 3-play 2-yard drive was set up by the previous drive that Indiana hadn't completed, because it leads to that stupid rolling punt that ends up getting downed at the 2-yard line.
right.
And so Indiana's punting out of the back of their end zone. Oregon gets the ball in great field position. And this might have been the best defensive drive of the game, considering the leverage and the stakes. Indiana stops Oregon, forces them to kick a field goal. Now it's tied, as opposed to that being a field goal that Oregon is kicking to take the lead. I thought that was a huge momentum shift. And then you add on to that the 9-play 75-yard drive that Indiana rolls down the field and scores on to take a 20-13 lead. And you go through all of those plays, and I mean, it was just like poetry in motion. It was a 1-yard gain, but then it was a pass interference call, the 8th one of the game. I think it was only the 2nd one flagged on Oregon. But then 5 yards to Omar Cooper, another Kalon Black run, another Mendoza scramble, another 8-yard Roman Hemby run, another pass from Mendoza to Surratt, and now you're in scoring territory. Omar Cooper slips, unfortunately, on that end around, but that doesn't set him back because you got Roman Hemby coming out of the backfield for 22 yards. And then you got another pass interference call, and then Roman Hemby treats Oregon's defense like a set of bowling pins on his way into the end zone. And suddenly Indiana's leading 20-13.
And that 2-yard run was the play call was like, that was just complete power football. It was like 3 guys lined up. It was just like, we're running this down your throat, and we're going to like, it was like they almost had a fullback and like a wing back. Like it was a wild formation, but it was just like, hey, we're running it straight down your throat. And they did.
Oregon has to punt. And then Indiana looks like they're in the driver's seat because they've taken what looks like it's going to be Oregon's, next punch. And now they've got the ball. And then you throw a pick 6. And it was a deflating moment in the IU crowd there in the end zone. But it was interesting watching the mentality of the guys coming off. And we saw a lot of quotes about this afterwards. Mendoza comes off the field and Signetti just asked him, like, having fun yet? Like, they knew it's like, we got a lot more to go. We're doing fine. A mistake was going to happen in the game. But as I mentioned earlier, a mistake happened at a time when Indiana could afford to make a mistake. It wasn't a backbreaker. And then they respond with what is probably, I think, the best drive of the game. 12 plays, 75 yards, methodical straight down the field. They retake that 7-point lead. And Scott, they wouldn't look back after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the game. Like it was them taking the punch of the pick 6 and then immediately counterpunching with a touchdown. And so often it's like the sequence of these events matter so much. Like you mentioned how, Indiana kicking the field goal to take the lead, or sorry, Oregon kicking the field goal to tie it as opposed to taking the lead. Like that matters. Just like earlier in the game when, Oregon scores the touchdown and Indiana comes back and gets some points. Like it's huge that you do that versus letting Oregon get, 2 scores back to back. And so the order of these things are huge, but just seeing it again and again, but that one where that could have been the most deflating moment. And that could be a moment where it's very easy for your mind to think like, damn, we're not good enough yet to beat these good teams. Like we're always going to make that mistake. Like this is again, I go back to it. It's the Ohio State punt. It's the, Notre Dame interception, the Notre Dame run. Like, damn it. We keep like, no, none of that. It's like, hey, let's just come back and have a 12-play drive and score a touchdown and ram it down their throat and see how they do.
And what I loved about that 12-play drive was, again, we talked earlier on about how Indiana has consolidated around a smaller group of playmakers, and they trust those guys to make plays. And you think about it, again, Roman Hemby, rush. Omar Cooper, catch for a first down. Roman Hemby, rush. Another Roman Hemby, rush. Another penalty, this time an offside on Oregon. Kalon Black gets 2 runs in a row. You get a pass to Elijah Surratt, another Hemby run. You get another pass to Surratt. And then, by the end of that, you get that touchdown pass to Elijah Surratt to close things off. They really used all of the tools in the toolbox on that drive. And I think back on it, like that was the greatest symbol of the offensive synergy that Indiana has got right now. And of course, you close the game off with
look at that drive. Like, again, go back to that drive, the way they ran the plays.
Yep.
It's like you have Mendoza coming off a pick six, so you need, you want to ease him back into throwing. They finished the drive throwing like 4 passes in a row, but you were able to do that because you had 6 runs. 6 of the first 7 plays were runs by Hemby. It's like, when have we ever said that, Galen? Like, in a top 10 matchup, it's like you can lean on your running back to get you 5 yards and 7 yards. And, normally what happens is we'll throw a pick 6 or something. And I mean, this is like pre-Signetti, so it's like this doesn't even almost make sense anymore. But like, you throw a pick 6 and it's like, all right, well, then what would happen is you'd run it and lose a yard, you run it, gain a yard. It's like, now you got to throw again. Like, and like all the pressure is back on the quarterback. It's like, no, we were able to run 6 plays and get a couple first downs all on the ground and let Mendoza just at least let things settle back for him again.
And of course, we wrap things up with the 2 interceptions that Indiana is able to pull off. And then that end of game drive, which actually kind of fouled up what was an even more impressive game from a defensive statistical perspective. You take that last drive out of the equation, and Oregon only gained 41 yards offensively in the entire second half.
Yeah.
That's
so that last thing I will ask you, we've had 2 games in a row. Like, the Iowa end of game scenario was just odd. We'll leave that as there. This one, I'm just curious your take on this. Like, I was curious as to what was going on, because like they kneeled. I've never seen a team just kneel a 4th down out. I was wondering, why not just take the punt? Like, why not punt it and you get a little extra time off the clock? I mean, it just kills 10 seconds of just up, ball in the air, waiting for it to land. They push them back. Like, I'm curious why you don't punt there.
Well, because strategically speaking, you could drop the punt could get blocked, they pick it up, they run down the field, they score. Well, now they've scored. Now you're only up 3, and now they can onside kick it. By taking it there and just dropping down and taking a knee, well, now they've still got what I think at that point, 55, 60 yards to go score a touchdown. And the way Indiana's defense played, I would rather make them have to go up against Indiana's defense, even on a halfway shortened field, versus taking a chance that something goes wrong on special teams. That's, to me, the answer. You're up 2 scores there. You run off as much time as you possibly can. Indiana got a little screwed because, the Isaiah Jones falls to the ground with 2:01 remaining. So that first kneel down only takes them to the 2-minute warning. But that's why you do that. You just don't risk going into special teams in that skate. That to me is the answer.
Okay.
Anyway, again, that was Recite the Drives, brought to you by Jeremy Barbuto and Ironhorn Enterprises. We buy commercial real estate. Give Jeremy a call, 315-436-3872, or email him at jeremy@ironhornenterprises.com. Recite the Drives, the best segment on Crimson Cast. If you'd like to sponsor your own segment, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Business is open here at the Back Home Network. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with a lot more talk. There's been a lot of banter back and forth in the chat about the Signetti Penn State thing. We're going to dive into that. I'm going to talk about some of the Autzen experience, some of the Eugene experience with game day, and a lot more right after this here on the Back Home Network. Stick with us here on Crimson Cast.
When the final buzzer sounds in Bloomington, the conversation starts here. The assembly call is IU basketball. Live post-game shows, smart midweek breakdowns, and no empty hot takes. Jared Morris, Coach Brian Tonsoni, Andy Bottoms, and Ryan Phillips dissect lineups, sets, and recruiting so you know what really happened and what it means for the Big Ten season, March, and beyond. Join the live chat on YouTube, then catch the podcast on Spotify and Apple. Just search Assembly Call and be part of Hoosier Nation's most trusted post-game tradition.
Welcome back to Crimson Cast Live. It's Sunday night. It's 10:19 here in the Eastern time zone. I woke up in the Pacific time zone. So it's been a long day, and we're excited to have all of you folks joining us over.
You woke up and went to bed in the Big Ten time zone.
I did indeed. The Big Ten, the Big Ten is like it's like Victorian era British Empire. The sun
never sets in the Big Ten. That's right.
But let's talk through first of all the overall setup down in Eugene. It was a fun time. Was able to go see the game day setup, which was in the middle of campus. Beautiful campus, by the way. It's different, looks a little more lived in some ways than Indiana's campus does. A lot of brick, but brick, like pretty brick, not Purdue brick. A lot of trees. They do a great job with the conifers throughout the campus area. And then the game day set was good. Hoosier the Bison was there. Got a picture with him at one point. Saw a ton of people from Indiana milling about. There were a lot more Hoosiers than I think people might have expected. There was still a ton of Oregon fans. Don't get me wrong, but it was weird in as much as game day started at 6 a.m. local time, and it wraps up at 9 o'clock local time because the game starts at 12:30 local time. But it was a cool vibe, and it was not too different from the game day setup that we saw here in Bloomington. And the setup wasn't that much bigger than what they had set up with IU. It was hilarious watching Pat McAfee both get the crowd started on the wrong foot at the very beginning of the broadcast and then end on the wrong foot with the crowd by picking Indiana. And I give Pat a lot of credit. That's gutsy. And we appreciate the support, certainly. Everybody else felt pretty dismissive about Indiana's chances, which was a pretty common theme across most of the pundits and experts, so to speak, that we've heard out of college football here over the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
The setup is interesting because the campus is on one side of the Willamette River, and then the other side of the river is where the stadium is at. So you walked on this pedestrian bridge that got pretty jammed after a while. But Autzen a cool stadium. If you haven't been there before, it's kind of off on this plain on its own on one side near the river, but then there's a bunch of stuff on the other side. Went to the IU Alumni Association event. That was a lot of fun. A lot of great people that we saw there. Spent a couple hours there and then went into the stadium. Autzen itself, I've been there once before. I love the architectural design. It's not that much bigger. In fact, it's about the same size as Memorial Stadium from a seating capacity perspective. It looks architecturally a lot more modern, although most of that is frankly just the very old style press box that Memorial Stadium still has that very much looks like an Art Deco-ish kind of thing, even though it's not Art Deco. But it's a little more angular. There's one longer side in Autzen, but it's not an immense stadium. There's no upper deck, and it's loud. But I will say, I think it's louder on the field likely than it is in the stands. We heard people say you're going to need earplugs. That might be true for people closer to the field. We were up in row 45. Most of the IU fans were like row 43 and up if you were in the IU section. And it didn't look that big on camera. I saw some of the shots. A bunch of people messaged me and said they saw me on television, which good to see you folks too. I was like, why is my phone blowing up here at the end of the game? And it's like, okay, they must have flashed me in the crowd. But it wasn't overwhelmingly loud by any means. It wasn't quiet. And I think Oregon does a great job with their sound system, but it wasn't the deafening thing that you might have expected. And that's simply because, again, I think it filters more onto the field. But Scott, I'll say, I don't think Indiana really got bothered at all by the crowd noise. They did get bothered by a lot of really dumb jumping around by the defensive line that should have been flagged on Oregon. Indiana was struggling with that, but that's because I don't think that was legal, what Oregon was doing. But the crowd noise itself really didn't seem to bother Indiana that much.
No, it seemed like they had a snap count. Like I think this guy next to the center was like doing an arm thing. And all the false starts were based on that weird defensive moving that was going on. From the way the game played out on TV, it didn't look like it was that big of an issue. And then, this is what you can do in venues like this. If you punch them in the mouth repeatedly and play this well, I'm sure after it's 27-20 and then you get the INT, it gets pretty quiet.
Someone asked, how did it compare to Iowa and Notre Dame and Ohio State? So Kinnick's designed in a similar fashion in terms of it's a dug-in bowl. Like if you walk past Kinnick on the outside, it feels like you're walking about halfway up the length of the stadium. Kinnick's, I think, louder when it's at full volume, which it isn't always. But Kinnick's really hard to play in. Ohio State, I think, in the stands is louder. I'm not sure if it's necessarily louder on the field, but Ohio State's pretty loud. I didn't think Notre Dame was that loud, all things considered.
No, I didn't either. I actually was not. Didn't think, and but you've heard that too with Michigan too. Like it's a very similar stadium to Michigan, where it's like the sound really kind of just pushes out.
yeah, with similar fans. I'll
Yeah,
note.
yeah.
But sorry, that's a different podcast, I think. Um, but no, look, Oregon is a really tough place to play. I mean, someone noted, Russell noted, Oregon hasn't lost a home game since 2022, and that was a 3-point loss to a Washington team that was really darn good. Yeah, that was the Michael Penix, Kalen
Yeah.
DeBoer team, the first year team that they had, not the one that went to the national title game. But
Indiana quarterbacks taking down Autzen.
but Oregon is incredibly hard to win at. And so, not to denigrate the atmosphere at all, I'm just saying I've heard louder in the Big Ten, but not a whole lot. I think Ohio State, Iowa, maybe Penn State have been the three that have felt louder to me, but certainly Michigan, Notre Dame didn't feel that loud by comparison. So it's a nice place. I recommend next time Indiana's out there, go. It's a really, really fun environment. And I noted this on my late night video that I recorded on X last night, but those people were really friendly, like really. And I'm not just saying that. And it's funny because like we were in the airport afterwards, and getting ready to fly back today, and there were some Oregon State fans sitting in the airport next to us, and I think I mentioned that to them. Yeah, the Oregon fans were friendly, and they were like, "Really? Well, normally they're assholes." Which I mean, you'd expect to hear from like
Right.
state rival. I'm sure people say Purdue and Indiana fans talk about themselves in a different way, but no. It was almost an uncanny level of friendliness. Like we had 20 or 30 people come up and say, not just welcome, but like thank you for coming to Eugene. And at about 5 or 6 times, I was like, is this like some kind of weird chamber of commerce thing that they're doing? But it was too many people in too many different locations, and they were very gracious in defeat. And it was cool. And I didn't realize this even last night when I made the video, but apparently they let the fans on the field. And I'm
Is
sure
that
some of you
normal? Like
apparently it is. They let fans on the field after the game, and it was really fascinating watching uh, fans going out on the field, and I was like, maybe we're allowed to do that, and so
Yeah,
we
no,
did.
because I was watching the post game, and then Signetti's on the set they have on the field. There's like, you see like Pam Whitten and like Dolson. There's like, some muckety mucks, and I was like, oh, like it's probably the big wigs. I'm like, there's a lot of people, a lot of IU fans. Like they really let it happen. Then they show like they do the camera shot over the stadium. It's like you see they have one of the gates open, just like and there's an usher just like opening up and like waving people from the stands in. It's like, oh, they're just letting people get down there.
Yeah, it was great. We
Yeah.
made it down there, and it was just this amazing celebration of just people just hugging each other and taking pictures and everything. I mean, it was one of those games or post games where you couldn't believe you were down on their field, and you couldn't believe what had just happened that had led up
Right.
to the moment of you getting down on the field. And eventually they kind of shoved everybody off, and that was neat. And there's a video I'll post at some point. There's a couple of different ones I want to meld together because we all got shoved out the tunnel that went up out of the stadium. So we like literally was all these IU fans that had been gradually moved off the field by security. The rope kept moving. So we're like singing the IU fight song as we're going up the tunnel. I got some
Oh,
videos
cool.
of that. That was amazing. So anyway, it was a fun experience, and I look forward to going back again at some point. And it's a great trip. I highly recommend it. Eugene is it's a larger city than Bloomington, but there's some Bloomington vibes. Imagine if all of the bars were upland, like if they were all
Yeah.
like food trucks and breweries. That's essentially where we congregated for most of our non-football watching time, and it was a lot of fun.
And you got to be on the flight that was made for the game. That's kind of cool.
That was fun. Yeah, that was a good time. It was a good mix of people on that flight, and got a chance to chat with a lot of different folks from different parts of the state. There were a lot of folks that work at IU that were on that flight as well. I thought it was really it was a good time all the way around. A lot of those people were on the return flight this morning too.
Yep.
So
Cool.
anyway, kind of shifting our attention a little bit, let's talk a bit about all the other news that's happened, and then we'll talk about the polls and so forth and where Indiana lands. I don't want to delay this anymore. First of all, I didn't want to.
Can we, real quick, just like historically where this put like after the game, I was watching with a bunch of my neighbors, like just where this how important this win was.
Yeah.
Because we get to the polls, some amazing things there. But I talk about my buddy Robert all the time, who's Michigan State grad, but he's a big college football fan, and he was like, look, man. I mean, he's like, that was a great win. He's like, I got to say, like, and he's very kindly, he's like, look, and I agree with what he said, is like, last year was fun. That was cute. It was good. I don't agree with all those things, but it's like that win you just had is like, you have a program now. Like that, like this, it doesn't mean like that is it's not like last season was a fluke, but like that, you can have one season kind of come out. He's like, you have a real program now. And to me, like, that's what this feels like. Is it feels like a program, and like I'm actually comfortable being like, I see a path to us going undefeated, going, people joke about the fever dreams, like going to the Big Ten title game to play Ohio State. And it's like, why not us? Like, who says we can't win the college football playoff? Like, seriously. And it feels like it is just, it changes the trajectory of everything. This one win, and it really codifies that it's like, oh, this is not a flash in the pan. This is a real program, which we'll go into the Penn State discussion too. But it's just like it's unbelievable how one win can really change all of this, but it does.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms, and this is, it's funny because you can already see some of the goalposts moving. I've just had to ban some trolls in the chat on YouTube. We know we've made it as a podcast when we've got trolls in the live chat. It's always a good time. I'm sure they'll be they'll be coming back under different names. It happens quite a bit here. But anyway, thanks to those of you who are in the live chat dealing with that nonsense. But you're already seeing the goalposts move. You're already seeing, oh, Oregon isn't that good because their best win was against Penn State.
Here we go.
It's not good. And there's always excuses with everything with this Indiana team. I'll give a lot of the national media some begrudging credit this week in most of the podcasts I've listened to. And Tom Fornelli from CBS Sports, I think, did a good job of actually summarizing this in an article where he said, how many more times are you going to try to move the goalposts essentially on Indiana? Just because you can't get it through your head that this is a really, really good team doesn't mean that they're not a really, really good team. It's a problem with you, observer. It's a problem with you, commentator. And a lot of this, I'm talking
I'm already seeing, like, you look at the rest of our schedules, like, man, the rest of the schedule is pretty soft. It's like, look at Ohio State's. Like, it's like, we just played a brutal 3-game stretch. Like, sorry, yes.
Well, and look, this is aided and abetted by voters across the country who cannot get a friggin' thing through their head about a team being good. Illinois is unranked despite their 2 losses being to the number 1 and number 3 teams in the country.
Right.
Like, give me a break. You would be celebrated if you were an SEC team with that resume. So that's where I look at what Indiana accomplished with this Oregon game, and taking go back and look at all the pre-game predictions. Go back and look at the statistical analysis. Look at the friggin' S&P Plus right now, which still has Oregon ranked ahead of Indiana, and it's because it's a statistical analysis. It doesn't necessarily automatically move a team up or down. Like, statistically speaking, Oregon played at such a high level coming into this game that they are still the top team in the country despite losing that game. And all that means is that Indiana beat a team that is legitimately a top team in the country. And they beat a really good team in Illinois earlier this year as well. So, look, there's a large-scale issue across the board that I think for IU fans, you just got to get used to, which is that there's just never going to be an acceptance of Indiana as being a good team in a lot of people's circles. And Oregon went through this too. Oregon went from being a nobody in college football, not as much of a nobody as Indiana, but like the Minnesota of the Pac-12, perhaps. No offense to Minnesota, but like they were a team that just kind of was there. And you never heard of – we were up in the Midwest. You never heard about Oregon. And then they made a Rose Bowl in the late 90s, and it was like an oddity. But Arizona State made a Rose Bowl.
Right, Washington State
made a Rose Bowl in the 90s. Oregon built themselves into a position where they had to be taken seriously. And it took a long time. And there are still people who are like, Oregon's always overrated. They're not. You're a moron if you think that. So Indiana is at the front end of that curve. The accomplishment of going into a team and a program as accomplished as Oregon in a toughest place to play as Oregon is, and winning a game by 10 there is not an equivalent in IU football history. There just is not. Indiana's won some good games at home. They famously in 67, they beat Purdue to go to the Rose Bowl. Right. And Purdue was 3rd in the country. That was a big win. This one was arguably bigger. Now, in the full totality of the season, maybe we'll go back and say that it wasn't as big because we find out that maybe Oregon wasn't the actual best team in the country. But as you just noted, I think if you go through Oregon's schedule and you look at what they have coming up, a real good chance that Oregon team just suffered their only loss of the regular season. And it was to Indiana, and it was at home, and it was by double digits. It was by multiple possessions.
This is one of those games that you have like as excited as you and I were both for this season. I picked us to go 11-1. You picked us to go 10-2. We both had us losing this game. I mean, and how many years have we done IU football talk where it's like we look at the season and it's like, all right, well, Ohio State and Michigan, those are losses. Like those, like you just won one of those games that everyone chalks up to a loss. Like that's the thing is like it isn't, and even I'm kind of playing both cards here. It's like even Illinois is kind, they're not like a traditional top 10 team. They are. I mean, they're a good team, but there is something historical about the Ohio State, the Michigan, those teams that just have it year over year. Oregon's there, and you just did it. And you did it on their field.
Yeah, it's a huge accomplishment, and it is a.
I mean, first time ever we're in the top 3 in the polls. First time we've ever. I don't know. I'm asking you. I think it's the first time we've ever gotten first place votes.
I think they got first place votes in 45. I got to go back and double check.
Oh, we won the title that year, though, right?
Well, yeah, to be continued. Yeah. But ultimately, yes, it's a program, not just a program. It's not a program defining win. It's a program redefining win.
Yeah.
And I think that's, for all we heard for IU last year was that Indiana couldn't measure up in these moments. All we heard before, and actually I think Reese Davis's whole opening monologue was Indiana, these are the games you have to win to prove that you belong on the national stage. Well, Indiana went in and did it. And you're always going to have some people who aren't going to go along with that and are going to say, well, they weren't actually, Oregon wasn't actually that good. It actually wasn't that big of a test. You can ignore that. It's right. Any other team does this. South Carolina does this. Alabama does this, goes into Oregon and wins. They just call off the rest of the college football season.
Right.
Okay? It's like just crown their ass right now. Just keep that in mind. So we'll see how this goes. I will say this about, and I heard a bunch of podcasts as I was driving back from the airport today. I was trying to catch all the Indiana segments, and you look at Indiana's schedule the rest of the way, and a lot of people are like, Indiana's probably going to go undefeated. Indiana can go undefeated. There's not a team on their schedule that they can't beat. They're going to have to be careful, though, because they're rapidly becoming the hunted. They're doing a really good job as the hunted, but it's easy.
And this is something I talked to my friends about last night. Is like we are now a different level of hunted. I mean, like last year it's like, oh, that would be a fun team to beat. But if Michigan won that game against us, it wouldn't have been like they would have. It was like, all right, we did what we needed to do. We beat Indiana. Now that you're a top 5 team,
right?
And you've done it, back like getting into that next step of echelon. Like a great example, like you said, but Oregon kind of getting to that point is like you get to a point where suddenly you're hunted all year. And it's not just, oh, Purdue would love to take you down. That'd be a big win. It's like, you are right. The rest of this year, we are hunted. And if we keep this up, we're just going to be hunted like Ohio State is hunted, where every game Ohio State plays, it's the biggest game of like a friend of mine said, like, we're at a point now where the next game is always going to be the biggest game of our season. Because, but like you think of Ohio State, every game they play, they are flirting with the chance that if they lose, they're going to get the field stormed. It's the biggest win. Like all hell's going to break loose if they lose. And we're in that point now where the rest of this season, it's the biggest win for any team that we play.
The flip side of it is we've already seen Indiana weather this kind of adversity last year. When they won the Nebraska game, it would have been easy to turn around, play a somewhat dangerous Washington team.
Without your quarterback,
having come off one of the biggest home wins in program history. And this coaching staff had them in exactly the right mindset.
Yep.
It would have been very easy going into that Michigan State game with an injured quarterback in a road environment against a team that was a little bit testy. I mean, we saw at the beginning of that game. But this coaching staff has done such a great job of channeling mentality. And you saw it in this game. You saw what they were able to do with the bye week, getting this team's headspace where it needed to be.
Well, and I also look at what happened last year as, instructive to what's going on this year. There's a lot of players outside of Mendoza, they were here last year. And I think that was informative. It's like, all right, everyone understands, like, all right, we're going for something bigger here. Like we need to take care of business against Michigan State, UCLA, because this isn't going to be fun just to make the college football playoff. Like, we did that. Yeah. Now we want to get there in a position where we're going to win a game. And yeah, I mean, but fever dreamy Scott is like, there's a world where if you can go clean the rest of this schedule, you're probably looking at a bye no matter what happens in the Big Ten title game. Like, you win it, you're bye. There's a real chance if you lose that game to Ohio State, you're probably still the 4 seed and you're still buying in.
That's assuming you're playing Ohio State, which isn't necessarily. I mean, here's the thing: Penn State. They fired James Franklin, which we're obviously going to talk about.
Right.
That's still a talented team,
and it's a tough place to play.
And a tough place to play. And you've seen what UCLA did in reacting. And I think to some degree, this is why Penn State went ahead and fired him now. You've seen what UCLA has responded to after firing Deshaun Foster.
Right.
There's some talented players on the team. So I'm just saying, Indiana's now given themselves some cushion where they don't have to win every game. But as you just said, that is such a desired pathway in the college football playoff. And that's where Indiana needs to be aimed at right now. And so you take it 1 week at a time. You got 3 games even before you got to think about that Penn State game. That's the kind of thing you want to think about. Now, as you pointed out, like, there's some fascinating stuff with the Big Ten and the way the schedules line up. Indiana and Oregon just played. Indiana beat Oregon, so they've got the tiebreaker there. Oregon does not play Ohio State. Indiana does not play Ohio State. Ohio State's schedule is an interesting one because you looked at it and you're like, well, Penn State's going to be a tough challenge for them. Doesn't look like quite that much anymore. And then they have to go to Michigan, which has been their personal ghost that they haven't been able to shake over the course of the last few seasons. They look much better than Michigan this year, but they look much better than
the last couple of years. Yeah, they won the title last year and couldn't beat Michigan.
And as Kent just pointed out, Drew Aller is out for the remainder of the year. I would actually say that might be a benefit, not a drawback, because I think the whole Penn State thing needed a fresh start. But that said, Indiana, if they take care of business the way they need to the rest of the way, and then you look at where the chips fall in terms of losses, I think it might end up being a situation where Indiana doesn't even play Ohio State if Ohio State loses to Michigan. But if Ohio State beats Michigan and it's 2 12-0 teams, as you said, I don't think Indiana gets punished that much for losing a Big Ten title game if that's how it goes. 2 undefeated 12-0 teams. As someone noted, I think it was on on Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman's podcast today. Like, that'd be just an absolute dynamite game, like the game that you don't normally get in one of these conference championship games. So,
of course, when we win it, it's like, man, they can't win like the neutral site though. Like, you got to go into the horseshoe and win.
Exactly. Yeah, you didn't really prove yourself.
Yeah, and is Ohio State really historically good?
Anyway, that's something to keep an eye on. That's for future weeks. I think
but I will say this: like, I'm also like, I hear all of that, but like, dude, as IU fans, like, we're ranked 3rd in the country. Absolutely. We got first place votes. Like, I don't think we're being slept on. Like, it's still not. You're not being treated quite with the same red carpet if like Ole Miss had just done this or if Auburn had done it. But who cares? I mean, it's not like we're not ranked in the top 5. I think we have a legitimate shot to be number 1. But like, there's also just mechanics of just like those teams are never going to get jumped. On the flip side, it's like I was telling my son this, like, we're in a good spot too. It's like no one's jumping us. Like, I don't see any other team out there winning a game where you're going to jump Indiana. Once you start getting first place votes, you're kind of locked into that spot. The only way you move up is if somebody loses. The only way you move down is if you lose.
Yeah, exactly. So Indiana just takes care of business week by week. Next game's Michigan State. That's a team that you got to get around and get ready for. Indiana's a 23.5-point favorite. I think I saw in that game. I don't know that Indiana's ever been that big of a favorite in the old brass spittoon. We'd have to go back and do some research, but this is not a series that has treated Indiana well historically. Obviously, Indiana won last year, but that's a big spread for Indiana, Michigan State. We're in a much different timeline than we're used to here, Scott.
Yeah, because that was the team we were trying to keep pace with, like that. Like just 18 months ago, it's like, can we just be at Michigan State's level?
Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the elephant that has been in the comment section since we started and got talked about a bunch. James Franklin fired unceremoniously. on the 12th of October, 15 days after he had a lead on Oregon in overtime.
I know.
This is a guy who played in the college football or coached in the college football playoff semifinals, 9 months ago.
Right.
And you want to talk about life coming at you fast. I mean, clearly things had drifted pretty askance when you lose to Oregon. Okay, that's tough. And yeah, a lot had been built up, but I mean, gosh, it happens, and
Right.
yes, it happens all the time. But then to turn around, lose to a UCLA team that had just fired their coach and had lost to Northwestern, and then to turn around and go home and lose to Northwestern and lose your starting quarterback. I mean, that's a lot. I'm still shocked that they make the move at this point. I do think you point at what happened with UCLA and you say, well, if we want to salvage the season and you can sense in the building that things have gone straight downhill and you're going to do it later, you might as well do it now. But $56 million buyout, Scott, $56 million, second largest buyout that a team's had to pay in college football history behind only Jimbo Fisher. I mean, man, just reflect in general on the end of the Franklin era. And it's hard. Like, this was a team that many people were picking confidently to win the national title this year. To have it end like this so quick.
I also find it odd when their next 3 games are at Iowa, at Ohio State, and home to Indiana. I mean, they could go 0-3 in those games, even with Franklin coaching. I mean, like you said, maybe they'll get a good dead cat bounce where, they change coaches and that makes a difference. But you would think it's like, all right, maybe the die is cast, but we at least need some steady hand at the helm, because these next 3 games, I mean, you could just go on an 0-6 0-6 run here. Like, we need someone to steady the ship. The buyout number is insane. And I also wonder, it is.
So I have breaking news here. It's actually 2 hours old, but it appears.
Did Johnson Smith get fired?
I believe maybe. I'm trying to get confirmation on this.
I saw something about that as I was trying to pull it up. I'm not sure.
I haven't seen a reliable source tweeting that Jonathan Smith has been fired yet. I've seen some questionable reports, but he's on the borderline anyway. Yeah. And also, I think Aiden Childs might have been injured in that game this weekend as well. I haven't had a chance to check on that. But regardless, the Jonathan Smith thing is not going well in Michigan State. But anyway, sorry, go ahead on the Penn State thing.
Well, no, but back to Penn State and Franklin it was kind of funny from afar to look at, his record against, top 10 teams was just not great. Like, it just was. And he was kind of a guy who could beat the teams he should beat and couldn't beat the teams he couldn't. It's funny how, Signetti started to get that handle after 2 games. It's like, all right, 3rd game, we'll get rid of that. We'll go ahead and beat Illinois, and then we'll go ahead and beat Oregon on the road. 2 wins that Franklin couldn't get. All that said, the buyout number is huge. And I just, as an observer, you look at this and it's like, man, did you guys, as Penn State fans, did you just want a little bit too much? Because there's probably 100 schools in the country that would grab James Franklin and what he did right now. And by the way, 20 months ago, you and I would have said the exact same thing. It's like, I will take Penn State's last every year they had under Franklin. I'll take it right now up until we hired Signetti. I will take it every single year. And I would say almost every team outside of Indiana, Ohio State, maybe Michigan would take exactly what Penn State has been doing. And you just, to do this and to spend that kind of money. And it's like, if you want to go get another coach, like you had mentioned, and we'll get to the Signetti piece, which I have a lot of thoughts on that I want to get to, but it's like, if you go and rip another coach out, that's another $20-30 million of buyout. Then you need to pay that guy a salary, and then you need to pay his staff. Like, this is a huge, it's not just the buyout number. This is gonna be another $50 million on top of the 50 they're already spending. It's like, are you 100% positive that you're going to do better than this? And you see, i.e., look at Nebraska, where it's just, they're like, hey man, we're better than this. It's like, nope, like you're, I don't know. That's what I would worry about if I was a Penn State fan, is like, this is a real quick snap decision. Because like you said,
well,
that Oregon game could have gone either way. And then it's like, yeah, 2 bad losses, but damn, man.
We heard rumors that this was being discussed at Penn State last week, like before the loss to Northwestern, which tells me that there was a feeling inside the building that something was wrong. And look, there were warning signs before the loss to UCLA. There were warning signs before the loss to Oregon. We talked about it on Football Weather. We talked about it a little bit on this show, how Penn State was getting credit for people thinking that they were good without anything to show for it. They had played a worse schedule than most teams, including Indiana.
They still haven't won a P4 game yet.
Right. And so you had the sense that maybe there was something off, but what was confusing about the whole situation was they move on, like Tom Allen moves on and goes to Clemson. They go out and spend all this money to get Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Ohio State, make him, I think, the highest paid defensive coordinator in the country. They did that back in January. This was supposed to be the finishing touches on a program that was poised to win a CFP title. To go from that to firing the coach at the cost of $56 million, and it's like $49 million for his regular contract buyout plus the $7 million of incentives that he could have won if he'd been allowed to coach the rest of the seasons. That's where that $56 million comes from. Like that, there had to have been something that made Pat Kraft and the Penn State athletic department or the donors uneasy, to the point that they felt like they had to pull the plug right now. I mean, I'll be fascinated when the postmortem actually comes out about what happened with this. But anyway, that in and of itself, I think you can intimate a couple of things. A, there were people who were willing to spend a ton of money to try to make this happen, and they did, because you don't do it unless you've got the commitments for the money. But B, there's got to be somebody they know is coming, and I don't think that's Curt Signetti. Like all the people who have been we've had a lot of comments in the chat. People have been texting me like, how worried should you be about Curt Signetti leaving? And you laid out a bunch of the reasons why I don't think people should be nervous about Curt Signetti going to Penn State. The money in and of itself, you've already spent $56 million. Now, that's a big hurdle. Penn State went ahead and jumped over that hurdle. But then I think it's $11 million to buy Signetti out. Signetti's going to want to bring his whole staff with him. And that's assuming that Indiana doesn't want to name one of those people as head coach if it were to happen. So you're talking about like 18 or 19 million to buy all of those people out because they're on multi-year contracts. Some of them are on $2 million, $2.5 million contracts. Then you got to pay Signetti. That's going to be an immense amount of money. And you're talking like all of it guaranteed, like a 10-year, $110 million, $120 million contract. The money isn't there. And you have to consider that you are now in an era when you don't have the budget anyway to pay for the $20.5 million in rev share that you have to pay for as part of the House settlement. That's the money that's going to the players. That comes out of your athletic budget. You can't just add that. That money's already spent elsewhere. It's not like you can just invent $20.5 million. So you're having to get donors to help with that too. There's only so many donors.
Yeah.
And there's only so many things that you can justify. And as you said, you're doing all of that. And you may be creating a circumstance where you can't give the coach what they need to actually be successful. You know what? We've heard this a lot. And I would remind people, go back to last year around this time when it was a common meme in college football social media for people to say, well, Signetti's going to be gone from Indiana in a year. He's going to get hired by whoever, like any of the jobs that were open. West Virginia was rumored for a while. It was just considered, he'll leave for any better job. And the reality is Indiana is as good of a job right now as most of the jobs in college football, in as much as they've got as much money as anybody except Ohio State. And last I checked, Ohio State was not looking for a coach. Michigan is not looking for a coach. That might be the other team in the conference that could legitimately say that they're on a completely different financial footing than the rest of the conference. Penn State, while they make a ton of money, is more on the Indiana level. They just had to spend all of this money to fire their coaching staff. And they're now going to have to figure out how to bring in somebody that the fans are going to be excited about, who's going to be able to put together a staff that's going to work. And now, and this is where, again, the Signetti thing, like one of the big things that made that move so special and why Signetti was able to get such a huge jump was the fact that he was bringing a bunch of players from James Madison that weren't really on the radar of a bunch of other people. So he wasn't bidding against a bunch of folks on the NIL front. That would not happen if he went to Penn State out of where he's at right now.
So I'm going to jump in here too. I think the other thing that's missed here is the national people who are just immediately being like, "Oh, he's from Pittsburgh, like he's the next one to go. That he's going to go to Penn State." I think they're missing. First off, it's just a simple, easy narrative. Like it's just being like, "Oh, the coaches always go to the next level." It's like, well, as we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, it's like things have changed, the economics have changed, and everything you laid out. There's a world where Indiana might be the third best job in the Big Ten, might be the best job in the Big Ten. Like it has the financial wherewithal. But I will say this: the people who are saying that, just you have to take a step back too and look at the person. Like there's a reason why Mark Few hasn't left Gonzaga. It's like partially because of what he built there. Partially, like Mark Few is the kind of person I think he wants to be in that kind of place. Scott Drew down in Baylor. Like certain people just want to stay in certain places. Certain people want to move to the next level. I'm going to say a couple. I've never met Curt Signetti. I don't know him personally, but I feel like I know his personality pretty well, having watched a lot of press conferences, see the way he handles things. A couple things. He's 64 years old. So anywhere, if he goes to another job, you assume it's like he can probably get to like 72 and still be able to be effective. And Belichick showing at some point it starts to drop off a cliff after that. Yeah. It's like everything went perfect at Indiana. Like the guys he brought over all worked. They won the right games. Like this, could you replicate this same kind of runway somewhere else? I don't know. He's a hell of a coach, but you need a lot of things to kind of work in tandem. There's two other things about Signetti. One is he's pissed that he didn't get any other opportunities. And I think that we have the good fortune of being a power team that gave him an opportunity. Were we desperate at the time as well? Yeah, but it's like we gave him an opportunity. And I have a feeling Signetti's looking around kind of like, hey, everybody else, kiss my ass. Like you had a chance to hire me 10 times over the last 15 years. You didn't do it. I think the other thing at play here is these guys understand the narratives and understand the stories. Signetti fully understands the Indiana narrative and what's going on. But here's what's different. Let's just say he goes to Penn State. Okay, let's just pretend like bad Scott Fever dream. He goes to Penn State. He turns it around in 2 years and they win a title. Okay, it's going to be, well, some of those were James Franklin's guys. Like they're like, oh, it's like the legacy of, Paterno and like, but it's like Franklin had a bunch of 5 stars. Like, Signetti brought his people in, but he was able to take, Franklin, like there'd be a lot of stories there. Like, I really believe Signetti's like what he says, like we're the emerging power. And by the way, if he wins a title in Indiana, there is no question about, was it other guys that you were playing well? It's like, this is all Curt Signetti. And he goes anywhere else, it's not going to be that way. Like he's not going to have the control that he has. And I mean, guys like this they have an ego. Like I think that's important to him as well. And I think there's something there. Now, I think what this does mean, it's like Dolson and Witten. It's like he will continue to push you, and you need to be willing to understand that we need to keep the pressure on and let him do what he needs to do. But I truly believe that as long as Indiana continues to stay committed, I don't know why Signetti would leave. And I don't think anything, if you understand him psychologically, I don't think any move makes sense for him. I think he's pissed and he wants to show the world that he is the best coach and he can do it here because this is all crafted 100% by him. And any other move you make, these bigger programs, no program, even Penn State, would give him the kind of control that he currently has at Indiana.
Yeah, look, I think ultimately all those things are good points. I'll also add the following. I mean, Penn State fans this offseason were lamenting how their NIL reservoir of money was dwarfed by Ohio State and Michigan. I think you could make an argument at this point that with the added money that Indiana's brought in on the NIL front, they probably have as much, if not slightly more NIL money available to them if they need it than Penn State does, which sounds baffling. But it feeds into this larger issue, which is that when you get outside of the media bubble, what you end up with is a situation where you can look at programs granularly and think about them within the confines of what each institution is doing, not look at the organizations and the institutions as caricatures or characters that are in this play that's going on in your head, which is what I feel like a lot of national media that talk about this stuff, all they can do is think about the programs as they were when they were growing up. And so in the minds of the Paul Feinbaums and the Josh Pates and all these other people, ultimately, Indiana is just this crap also ran program that doesn't have money, that doesn't put money into football. And of course, anybody that has any success is going to bounce somewhere else. But that's not what the last couple of years have looked like. And that's not the reality on the ground. And, go and read that article that CBS dropped that talked about the new relationship between Mark Cuban and the athletic department and how he and Signetti bonded at a Mellencamp concert and discovered they were born at the same hospital in Pittsburgh. And they were 3 years apart in age. And Signetti, he talks with them, and Cuban actually gives money to athletics programs, read football, for the first time ever, which is something like he's really avoided doing for a variety of reasons that are unique to Mark. But the point is, the resources are there, and the idea that you want to go automatically to a new program is it just kind of it's a very old way of thinking.
Right.
And this idea that, well, gosh, what's at the core of it, at the fundamental core, the idea is, well, I need to go somewhere where I can go recruit at the top level, and I have to be there because that's the only place I can win a national title. Folks, look at the top 20 right now in college football. Look at the teams that are up there. Look at Indiana. Look at Vanderbilt. Look at Ole Miss.
Georgia Tech.
Look at Texas Tech.
BYU.
There are so many.
Vanderbilt.
I said Vanderbilt already.
Oh, sorry.
There are so many programs. Miami, who everybody thinks of as a blue blood. Miami was in the wilderness for 20 years.
Yeah.
With not knowing what to do, and they don't have that much money. People think Miami's this flush institution. It's not.
Well, it's about Ole Miss too. It's not like Ole Miss has been a top 20 team for years.
My point is, you don't have to be at Florida State or at Alabama or at Ohio State. It's nice to be at those places, but Penn State is not those places.
The financial model has changed. And so just because Penn State is a blue blood and has a big stadium doesn't mean that their NIL is bigger than Indiana's.
And I'll note also this. Think about the logic of this. You're Curt Signetti. You've waited your whole life for this chance. You got a team into the playoffs last year. You just won the biggest game in program history on the road. You have a clear path to the playoff again. You're going to make the playoff 2 years in a row at frickin' Indiana. You want to leave that to go coach at a program that just fired a coach that was in the semifinals of the college football playoff last year, that just voluntarily ate a $56 million buyout? Are you walking into that as a 64-year-old head coach who has built their whole life to get to a point where they can be relevant on the national stage? For what? For a program that at the most generous of definitions is Mark Richt era Georgia. But I got news for you. Like, Georgia had 35, 40 years of potential. They had the wrong coaches in place to take that final step. That's not Penn State. Penn State's last national title was a year before Indiana's last national title in basketball. I think that's a really important point. We're not talking about the Ohio State job here. We're not talking about the Alabama job here. We're talking about Penn State, who thinks they're in that echelon, but is not. And so I'll also note this. The idea, I think it's lazy journalism and lazy commentary to think, oh, Curt Signetti's from Pennsylvania. He must, that he'll go back home to Penn State. Can I note the following things? Curt Signetti's dad coached at West Virginia, which is notably not Penn State.
Right.
Curt Signetti is from the city of Pittsburgh, which notably has a big-time college football program that is not Penn State. Curt Signetti coached at Pittsburgh as a wide receivers coach, as an assistant coach in the 90s. Maybe there's something about Curt Signetti I don't know, but I don't think Curt Signetti has been pining his entire professional life to go coach at Penn State. That's probably, again, I don't know, that's probably the school they've looked at as the enemy over the course of that family's history, just given where they have coached at and given where they grew up. And again, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you can assume that you're right by arguing the opposite. So these are the kinds of things that are going to be fascinating to watch as we move forward, obviously. And look, who knows? I'm not on a regular chat with Curt Signetti. I don't have any insights on things. What I do know is this: anything's possible. Who knows? Maybe all of that's wrong, but it seems really implausible that across the board what you're dealing with right now is a lot of bad misperceptions amongst media and fans about what's important to coaches in this era. And what Indiana provides, as weird as it is to a lot of people, what Indiana provides is exactly what a coach like Curt Signetti wants: the ability to compete at a high level, the NIL resources and the rev share resources to do that, uh, the willingness of donors like Mark Cuban and others to make capital improvements like they've already made and are planning on making as they move forward, and the ability to perform at a high level for a fan base and a donor base that isn't going to look to control what you're doing with your staff, control what you're doing with your game by game stuff, and get ready to fire you after making the college football playoff semifinal the previous year if things don't go exactly the way they want. I think all those things need to be held in your thoughts as you're thinking about the idea of Curt Signetti to Penn State. I just don't see it happening.
And again, I don't think he's going anywhere. Like it goes back to the age, the time, and just again, this has been the perfect lead up at Indiana. You've done everything right. You've lined it all up. It's like if you move again, if he wants to win a title, his best place is going to be at Indiana. As crazy as that sounds, because any other job you go to, it's like if he doesn't go this year, he's 65, you're 66. It's like you don't have 7 years to build a program. Like if you're Signetti, you have like 5 or 6 years to get one in. And it's like this is going to be your best place because you go to Penn State, like you're taking over a dumpster fire. Like that's great. Like they are in a complete upheaval. And
well,
yeah,
and you've still got a Joe Paterno versus new wave thing going back and forth. That doesn't seem like a situation most coaches want to walk into unless you have an ironclad relationship with the athletic director. You know who has an ironclad relationship with Pat Kraft? Matt Rule. Matt Rule, who played at Penn State? Famously not Curt Signetti. You know who did? Matt Rule. I would look there if I'm looking anywhere, okay? Yeah. That seems like the logical answer. There was a question from AJ. Does Indiana now have to make a more aggressive financial move with Sig just because of this? I think they were going to do that anyway. Like they doubled, essentially more than doubled Curt Signetti's contract from last year to this year. They increased the assistant pool to where it's still, I think, the second biggest assistant pool in the Big Ten.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Bigger, by the way, than Penn State. Yes.
No, I think that's the important thing. And that I don't think they need to come out tomorrow and like just pay him more to get Penn State. I just think I personally think that, you'll probably renegotiate things. But I think what's going to happen this offseason is Signetti's going to ask for more money for his staff or more money to get the people that he wants or keep the people he wants. It's like Indiana's got to just buck up and they have to look at it too. It's like, all right, we have a 5 to 7 year runway to make this work. Like Signetti's not going to be here for 20 years. This is a window. This is not time to get alligator arms with the wallet. Like you're sitting on it, and I don't think they will, but it's like that's the only thing to me that could scuttle this is if suddenly Indiana's like, well, I don't know, like we're pretty happy with it, but we're not going to pay an extra $200,000. Like you can't do that. If Signetti wants somebody, you pay them whatever the hell they want.
And look, as I said on Twitter earlier today, this is now in Indiana. This is Indiana University and a football program and a donor base and an alumni base that now have the fresh taste of success in their mouth. And that's not something that this group wants to give up. That this is as important as anything right now, I think, for the overall reputation of the university is this newfound focus on football. And the idea that you can be good at football, you can embrace it, you can spend money on it, and that it's necessary in today's college athletics environment. You have to do that. You've stumbled in to a utopia here with Curt Signetti, and it was an amazing sequence that led to it. The idea that that's just going to evaporate because you're not willing to pay some extra money or find extra money, I think is silly. So
and up to this point, they've done the right thing every time. Like when the strength conditioning coach wanted a raise, they gave it to him. Like, so I'm not concerned that they won't. And I sleep fine at night. I'm not concerned at all that Signetti's going anywhere. His best, he said it. We're the emerging superpower. He's right. And I truly believe his best chance to win a title is at Indiana.
We had a couple of quick questions. Where did they go here? I'm sorry, we already hit that one. Someone asked where they can get your shirt real quick. Where'd you get that shirt at? It's a nice Bison shirt.
Oh, it's a nice Bison. I think this is a home fee. This is the Hoosier Connect. I think this is part of their collection, I believe.
Scott doesn't know where his shirts come from. We've determined.
Yeah, it's
we'll put that in the show notes and get that to you in a little bit. But no, Oregon will get him a raise, not Penn State. I mean, both do. The on-field success, I think, again, when you have a coach that gets you to the college football playoff, you more than double his salary. When you have a coach that gets you ranked in the top 3 with first place votes for the first time in 60 years, you're maybe en route back to the college football playoff for a second time. That's what gets you raises. But also, as we saw with the assistants, as we saw with Derek Owings and Brian Haynes, when other programs come calling, you find the money and you keep those people. That's the thing. It's like, if Indiana A didn't have resources or B was going to get chintzy at this point, Brian Haynes isn't the defensive coordinator this year. He's already somewhere else. Derek Owings is already at USC as their strength and conditioning coach. He's not still here. Like, there's so much evidence, for those who are worried, and this is my last statement on this, there's so much evidence that Indiana not only has the money but is willing to spend it, that I think if you're overly concerned about it from that perspective, that's not the thing to be concerned about. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about.
Well, again, I agree too. He's not going anywhere, nothing to be concerned about, but it's like you're also about to go into 2 weeks of 2 complete sellouts, back-to-back sellouts, where they're just going to see money rolling in like they haven't, up until last year, you just didn't see that because you didn't have sellouts.
Yeah. So anyway, last thing I wanted to hit, the rankings, as you mentioned. We're going to talk more about the rankings on Football Weather, I think, tomorrow. We're also doing, I believe, a live Big Red Carpet tomorrow at 5 p.m. with a very special guest. So if you should be around, make yourself.
Do we hire James Franklin?
Special consultant to the program. James Franklin going to be joining the program or the show. No, when we look at the AP Top 25, which is the only one to pay attention to, Ohio State first with 50 votes, 50 first place votes. Miami second with 13. Indiana third with 3 first place.
3 heroes, just 3 heroes out there.
Stephen Means from the Cleveland.com. I owe you a steak dinner. He doesn't watch the pod, but I'll buy him a steak dinner next time I see him. Texas A&M fourth, Ole Miss fifth, and it's a sizable gap. I mean, Ohio State 1,631 points in the poll. Miami 1,582, Indiana 1,531, Texas A&M 1,433. So Indiana was solidly third. This was not like a fluke or like barely third kind of thing. Look, the way that polls work, and we know that the way that polls work, Ohio State, you're not going to get people to stop voting them number one because, A, people sincerely believe at this point that Ohio State is the best team in the country. And they have a really good win on the road at Illinois. They have a really good win on the road at Washington. They have a really good win at home against Texas, which looks a lot better this week, I'll note, because of what Texas did in the Red River rivalry. So I don't begrudge people voting Ohio State first, and even the people who would argue, as I would, that Indiana's got a better individual win with the win at Oregon than Ohio State has. Also, notably, again, a win Ohio State didn't pick up last year that Indiana picked up this year. The reality is you're not going to get people moving off of voting Ohio State first. I get it. Miami's a bit of a sketchier one because I just don't think Miami's resume, while impressive, is that impressive. Yes, the win at home against Notre Dame by 3, that's a good win. And then you look at what they've done elsewhere. That Florida State win does not look impressive. Florida State just lost at home to Pitt. Florida State still hasn't won an ACC game, which is pretty wild to think about. The South Florida win is a nice win, but it's not a great win. The Florida win is a nice win, but it's not a great win. And, I still think Miami's going to lose a game. I don't see right now, when you look at what Miami's done, where you say that they've got a better resume than Indiana. And what's fascinating about them is that you look at S&P Plus, which is, a really reliable independent ranking system. Miami's 15th in the country in S&P Plus. You look at FPI, which is ESPN's metric, they're 8th. Indiana's 2nd, and Indiana's 3rd in S&P Plus. So that's where this is again where I struggle with the polls, because it's like, if you're not using the power ratings to independently evaluate how good teams are, and all you're doing is relying on your dead reckoning of the schedule, that's not a great way of going about the votes. And when you add in who the wins are against and where they're at, and you don't factor that in, that's where I just think it's pretty sketchy with the voting. But that's also what you get. A lot of pollsters have this weird thing where they won't move a team back in the rankings if they don't lose. Although ironically, they did do that with Ole Miss because Indiana jumped Ole Miss in these rankings, even though Ole Miss won. Oh, that was a terrible game, winning against Washington State. So,
I mean, looking ahead, you look at Ohio State's schedule, like, they're home to Penn State. That doesn't look as tough anymore. I mean, they have a pretty easy run up to the at Michigan game. So that I could see, and that's a team that, they don't normally stub their toe. I'm with you on Miami. It just feels like they're going to lose one because they kind of do that every year. Although they have a really soft schedule. They're playing Louisville, Stanford, at SMU, Syracuse, NC State, at Virginia Tech, at Pitt. Like, it's not a murderer's row there. You look at the other two teams that are right below Indiana. It's like, can A&M or Ole Miss do anything to jump Indiana? Again, we're assuming Indiana goes clean throughout their wins. If obviously they lose, they're going to drop. For Texas A&M, they have a stretch coming up where they play at Arkansas, at LSU, and at Missouri. I mean, I don't think that's enough, but there's a world. Yeah, let's go. The Franklin pod.
It's just him for 30 seconds reciting the name of the next team on Indiana's schedule. So we just hire him and he records Michigan State, Michigan State, Michigan State, Michigan State, Michigan State, and then that's it. If you want to sponsor that, folks, we'd be happy to talk with you. Anyway,
we don't need to pay him much. He's got $49 million in the bank. I mean, he's good for at least a couple of weeks. I don't see beating.
Hey, Kurt, thank you, my friend.
Oh, thanks, man.
Kurt, you are awesome. Thank you.
I don't see A&M if they win at LSU and win at Missouri. Those are two solid wins, although it's like at that point, how good is LSU and how good is Missouri? I don't think that's enough to jump them to get Indiana. And then you look at Ole Miss's schedule. I mean, they have a 3-game stretch. They're at Georgia, at Oklahoma, and then home to South Carolina. Again, I mean, at that point, I'm not sure beating Georgia gets you to a point where that jumps Indiana. So I think Indiana's firmly in 3, and they're going to stay there. If they go clean, it's just waiting for someone else to lose, and they'll just be at 3, and they might pick up a first place vote here or there, just depending on how things break. Does Illinois does Illinois finish off and win everything else? Now they got the 2 tough games out of the way. I think that's kind of what comes to it, but I don't see them dropping out of 3 without a loss.
I agree. And look, I think Indiana, this is where getting ranked this high and maybe being just on the outside, it might be the best thing for Indiana. I would love to see, I mean, because Signetti will be able to hold that over them in practice. You guys think you're great. You're not even the top ranked team in the Big Ten. Stuff like that. I'm serious. I mean, this is where you got to reset your team's mentality and expectations, and you got to guard against rat poison, as we hear Nick Saban talk about. We know Curt Signetti subscribes to that same theory. And this is where, kind of going back to that last point I was making with the rankings, the point from a while ago about how you handle success and how you handle the rest of the schedule. It's not just the hunter versus the hunted. It's about how do you maintain the high levels that you're capable of when you start thinking along the lines of, well, gosh, we're ranked in the top 5 or we're ranked in the top 3. And you're going up against teams that are very good. I mean, again, maybe Penn State just was having a dumpster fire of a season, but at one point they were a top 5 team. UCLA beats them. It shows how the talent margins are not always as big as we think they are in college football. And that's an important thing to remember as you go down the pathway. If you're Indiana, you got some experience with this last year in terms of being ranked in the top 10. You're used to it more now. Now you've got a different set of mental battles that you have to engage in because you got to stay locked in because every opponent is capable of beating you if you don't play at your best. And that's where I think this coaching staff is really, really good. We're really, really fortunate at IU to have this group doing what they do and doing it in a way that makes Indiana feel like they are where they need to be as a team at all times. That's exciting.
It also puts this is back to the video game. I play a lot of the NCAA video game, and I have a couple dynasties with other friends. And, I do a lot of audibles, which sucks during the regular season because you have the road games and they're tough to audible with the crowd noise. But it's like, I know if I can just get into the playoff, I'm fine because you get to those games, they're neutral site and you can audible and all that doesn't really go away. That's what's so cool about what's in front of us right now is could we go and beat Ohio State at Ohio State? I'm not sure. Could we beat Georgia at Georgia? I don't know. Like I'm way more confident now than I was 2 days ago, but like those are still tough ass. Like just because we beat Oregon doesn't mean it's any easier to go win at Ohio State or win at Michigan. But here's the good news, man. We don't need to do any of that. And if we win the rest of these games, we don't need to do that in the playoff either. Those are going to be in atmospheres where all that gets washed away. It just becomes team against team. And it's like we can play Miami. We can play Ole Miss, we can play Georgia, we can play Alabama, and we can play them in a neutral site.
Yeah.
And I like our chances against anybody in those scenarios.
Last thing I'll note, I want to call this up. This is the FPI resume page. I just want to note some stats, okay? Indiana is first in strength of record, which of course is a metric that the SEC people have been touting. It's about how well you play against the schedule that you've had. Indiana's first in the country in that. They're second in FPI, which is, of course, ESPN's power metric. They are
when they want to use it, when they want to use it.
They're 17th in strength of schedule. That's better than Texas A&M. It's better than Ohio State. It's better than Texas Tech. It's better than Ole Miss. It's about the same as Miami. Alabama's strength of schedule right now is second. But you go down the list, it's a better strength of schedule for Indiana than LSU. It's a better strength of schedule than Oregon. It's a better strength of schedule than Oklahoma and Vanderbilt and Tennessee. Indiana's done everything this season against the thing that people said they couldn't do it against last year. So keep that in mind as we move forward with these things, because ultimately, when people talk about the committee, we've had some chat in the committee or in the comments about what the committee is going to do. A lot of it ends up being what the committee looks at is the metrics. They look at they look at strength of record. They look at FPI. They do use those things. And Indiana had to overcome a little bit of that last year with the strength of scheduling. They're not going to have to do that this year.
Right.
And so Indiana starts from a completely different perspective when that first round of the College Football Playoff Committee rankings comes out that first week in November. So you got to hold serve, but Indiana's in really good shape to hold serve as they move forward with all of this.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've gone almost 2 hours. My voice is about to die, so we should probably cut this off. Scott, any final thoughts from you on anything before we wrap up?
No, this is unbelievable. We're in rarefied air. This is unreal. I almost feel like we almost seem too subdued. I mean, I just want to like just yell and cuss. And like, that's all I did yesterday. It's just, it's almost beyond like, I mean, like there was like, like when the Watford shot went down, it's like, that was just like unbelievable emotion and just screaming like, oh my God, like this is almost a level beyond that of just like, I can't even fully comprehend what we're talking about, that I legitimately feel like we could win a Big Ten title and we can win a national championship. And just it also, it's like, I think so many of us as IU fans, what a joy to be in it. We're all in the fever dream, man. We're all there. We're all in the fever dream. I mean, now it's like the fever dream is we're talking titles. Like we're talking legitimate national titles going, it's like, do I want to spend my money going to the semifinal game, save it for the final game? I mean, but I think what this, to me, I feel like the barriers are finally breaking down where, I know friends, like I have a friend who's a Michigan football fan. I love him. He's a great guy. Went to Michigan. It's like one of the negatives about him, but it's like, he has that attitude of just a Michigan fan who's like, oh man, we're going to be awesome. We're going to be 12-1. Like we're going to kick the hell out of Ohio State. It's like, I've never had that as an IU football fan. Like I'm so scared. It's like, all right, well, I know we're going to lose that. And like, again, back to our season preview, we're both just like, well, Oregon, just like, that's not a game you can win. You can't go to Autzen and just win. That's not for Indiana to go do. And now is the first time I feel like I can be confident as a fan and be like, no, I'm very comfortable saying I think we'll go 12-0, or I think we're going to win the rest of our games. Or yeah, I know it's, you can't take anybody lightly, but yeah, I think there's a real chance we should go into Penn State and win. I mean, we're there. And that is just an insane place to be. But this win, it just changes everything. And it's so interesting, like with the Franklin, him just having that trouble with the top 10 teams, seeing it like with Signetti, where it just like started for 2 games. Again, very unfair criticism, I think, but it's like, that was the building narrative that obviously everybody in the national media wanted to tag on Signetti. It's like, oh, well, he just can't win the big games, just like all like Franklin. It's like, no, 3rd game, I'm done. Like, no, we're going to go ahead and win this one. And I think he knew he wanted that. And yeah, man, I'm stunned. I'm never been more fired up. And let's go play some college football games and bowl games. Let's go do it.
Let's take it one game at a time. Let's start with Michigan State.
Fair enough.
The last thing I'll say real quick is I sometimes it's easy to lose track of when you're living in the middle of history because you're in the moment and you don't have the benefit of hindsight. You don't have the benefit of looking at things from the top down. And the number of people I saw this week say, or this last really 24 hours, say what is true, which is that what Curt Signetti has done with this Indiana program over the course of a year and a half is maybe the greatest coaching job that we'll see in this century.
Yeah.
And it's one of the greatest coaching jobs in the history of college football. And to turn around a program this quickly, yes, there's been a ton of factors that have gone into that. NIL and the opening up of the financial elements and the opening of the transfer portal and Indiana being in the position where they would bring in an entire coaching staff from a G5 school without blinking. This collection of guys as coaches with Signetti at the helm, I just want to tip my hat to them. I mean, the players deserve all the credit in the world for going out and executing it. But we've seen over the course of college football history, and especially you go season to season, you watch all these programs. It is so clear which programs are well run and which programs are not well run. And Indiana exudes a level of organization, of confidence, of logistical excellence, all the things that you don't think about, that don't get talked about as being important in running college football programs, but that every successful college football program has. To be able to go into Oregon and win, to be able to be third in the country with Indiana. This is a level of excellence that we've never seen in football here, and you've not seen it in a whole lot of other places elsewhere in football. So I just want to salute the coaches and Curt Signetti in particular for what they have done with this collection of players. They have taken their own players from James Madison and they've made them into Power 4 level players, Power 2 level players, guys that are going to get drafted. They've taken Tom Allen's former players that stuck around, like Omar Cooper, like Isaiah Jones, and they have turned them into players that could be playing on Sundays. They've taken guys like Khalil Benson, who kind of bounced around for a little bit, Lewis Moore, and made them into productive pieces. How
many NFL players were on this team?
I mean, I constantly talk about how it just feels like we've been dropped into a completely foreign reality.
Right.
If you're an IU football fan, and the number of people before the game, partially, but especially after the game, that expressed some version of that to me on the field or out at the bars or whatever. I mean, I couldn't agree with all those people more. And it's one of those things where we talked last year about enjoy the ride because it won't ever be the same as it was last year. I'm starting to think I was wrong. This is almost more fun this year because of how much higher the ceiling is on this team and how much better they are. And that is a testament to this coaching staff because they could have looked at what they did last year and said, wow, we're great. And instead they looked at it and they said, how can we be greater?
Yeah, I still haven't seen Signetti happy on a field yet.
No. So anyway, we'll leave on that note. We really appreciate you folks sticking with us, whether you watch live or whether you are listening afterwards or watching afterwards. Thank you so much. Can't do another hour. Voice isn't going to last. Voice isn't going to last. It's a bad idea. Bad idea. But anyway, we really appreciate, again, you folks joining us. And for those who I saw out in Austin and Eugene, oh, yeah, actually, wait. Reese brought up a great point.
Yeah.
We didn't even mention
that
IU is bowl eligible. It was such an afterthought. It didn't make a 2-hour show about Indiana football.
So you think we're going to Detroit Bowl? We're going to Detroit or Nashville? What are we looking at? That's wild. We've reset expectations for ourselves too.
Just amazing. Anyway, all right. We're out for real. For Scott, I'm Galen. This is Crimson Cast. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Back Home Network. 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, live. Big red carpet with Rhett Lewis. You're not going to want to miss it. I might hop on for a little bit on that one as well. Anyway, our thanks to Jeremy Barbuto, sponsoring Recite the Drives. Our thanks to Home Field Apparel. Our thanks to all of you folks. Stay never daunted. So long, everybody.